Montgomery Kemp. I worked over the years helping Tony with this cook-off and just doing, I used to say that I just did whatever Tony told me to, and that was my job. First time I ever worked with him at all was one of those times when he was doing the barbecue for the Golden Eagle Scramble, which is a big golf tournament at Tech, and he worked my butt off, and I learned a lot from him. And I remember how quickly he could use one of those little Cadillac burners to whip up gumbo. I was always amazed with that. And the other thing that I always learned from him was his philosophy about taking care of the cooking teams. He made sure that they were felt good and that they were happy, and he had a phrase for saying for that. He said, we got everything done now, the meat's inspected and all that, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to go around and spread sugar. I'll always remember that statement that he made. It was one of his favorite statements. But I'm very glad that I was able to work with Tony these years. He was a great guy.
Hello there. I'm Jim Tabb, Tryon, North Carolina, and I'm here to tell you about the first time I ever came across Tony Stone. I think it was long about 1989, maybe, about 1980, somewhere in that neighborhood in Boston. And I was up there doing a contest for some fellow, helping him set up a contest. And we were right in downtown Boston. Lots of activity, lots of people and everything. And Carolyn Wells and Gary Wells were up there at the time. Paul Kirk was there, I remember, because I think he had a pit fire while he was up there, and it was probably the first one that I ever saw, and it may have been Paul's first one, but it wasn't very much fun. Anyway, while up there, this little short gentleman and another fellow with him, who I think may have been George Sasser. I'll have to talk to George today and find out. But they walked up to me and they introduced themselves, and they said they were from Tennessee. And I thought, well, I wonder what these boys are doing up here in Boston from Tennessee. And oh, we're trying to find out something about barbecue. I said, what you want to know? I said, want to know how to run a contest, what goes on, what has to happen. And so anyway, we talked about barbecue and for quite a lengthy time, and they hung around, and pretty soon they went on about the way. And I looked at them, and I thought to myself when I met him, I said, that fella, he's kind of tough looking. He looks like a football coach or a wrestler or somebody or a longshoreman, but he just didn't look very barbecue to me. And I said, that'll probably be the last time I ever laid eyes on that man. What a mistake that was. It turns out he took that conversation and he ran with some other conversations he had with people, and the rest is history, and everybody knows what he's done for barbecue through the years. We all love him, we'll miss him, and he has just done wonderful things for a lot of people. An honest, real man. Never heard anybody say a bad word about him. Can't often say that about people we know, but I can say that about Tony Stone.
Tennessee. We've been competing at the Cookville Cook-Off for the last 5 or 6 years. I had the pleasure of meeting Tony Stone through his brother Harold Stone several years ago before I was involved in barbecue. So when we met Tony at a barbecue, we were like old friends, seeing each other again. So it was very cool. But the first year I cooked this contest, Tony, I asked Tony, where do I need to park my truck? And he said, I'll park it over there. So I went and parked it over there, and about 30 minutes later, here comes Tony back. He says, hey, Durag, I need you to move your truck. I'm like, okay, no problem. Just put it over there. So I moved it over to another spot. And about 2 hours later, here comes Tony again and says, Durag, I need you to move your truck again. I'm like, darn, okay. So I went and moved it somewhere else. Well, it wasn't 2 hours later, he comes back the third time and says, Durag, you're not going to believe this, but I need you to move your truck. So I did. He felt bad about it, but ever since then, every time we'd see each other, he'd just grin at me with them eyes and say, Durag, move your truck. We'd just laugh like two little kids. So it's a good story. I'd like to think that at some point this weekend, I'm going to have to go move my truck for Tony. So we're going to miss you, Tony, and we're happy to be here in Cookville and hope that we can fulfill your legacy here. And we appreciate what you've done for this town and the barbecue community, and you're going to be missed. I'm glad I got to know you, Tony.
We lost a good friend this week, a mentor and a father figure to me, Tony Stone, and been asked to tell some Tony Stone stories. And I don't know, me and Tony been together for probably 15, 17 years. Had some good times. Probably one of the best ones. We spent some time together, George Sasser and Jay Staggs and myself and Tony. We all went to Terlingua, Texas, and if you haven't been to Terlingua, it's in the middle of southwest Texas, about 13 miles from the Mexican border, with no water, no electricity, by the Big Bend, I think it is, park. But we took motor home, and we had a driver. We had a kid we had driving, and I've always had problems with indigestion sometimes, and Tony and I got up one morning and decided we're going to go ride in the Gator. After daylight, it didn't get daylight out there in November till probably 8 o'clock. And everybody on the barbecue circuit knows I'm subject to having a screwdriver early in the morning. And we had us a driver anyhow, so Tony liked to have what he called four fingers. So he had him four fingers, a gentleman jacket and a cup, and he got to driving the Gator. And we were at the Terlingua contest called Behind the Store. He had him four fingers of gentleman jack. I had my screwdriver. We rode up to the store. They had homemade tamales. This is about 9 o'clock in the morning. Tony went in. He bought us a dozen tamales, and we sat there and we ate tamales and gentleman jack and screwdrivers for breakfast. And I happened to call home later, and my wife goes, "That sounds like indigestion." And I went, "No." I said, "I can't believe it. I never had indigestion on the whole trip because we just did nothing but eat trash and party." I mean, Tony was my buddy. And if I asked Tony a question, because he was my mentor and helped me set up my contest in Huntsville, I said, "Mr. Mayor, what about this?" And Tony go, "Mr. Dog, I don't believe you ought to do that." And we all know how we questioned our parents. And if the mayor told me I don't believe I'd do that, I've never done it. But if he said, "Dog, go for it," I was wide open and let it go. And he never steered me wrong. I lost a real good friend.
Like I said, David Roper, Fayetteville, Tennessee. Said August the 26th to August the 22nd of 1996, I come to Cookeville for the KCBS judging class. Said Mr. Tony cooked for the contest and all in. That was the first time I got to eat some of his cooking. Didn't know it at that time till after the judging was over with and all. So it took the class. Mr. Tony come in, said, "Any of you folks want to judge this weekend?" This was on Thursday. So there were several of us raised their hand, or 3 or 4 of us raised their hand. At that time, most of the people that were taking the classes were cooks and all. So raised my hand. Mr. Tony said, "I'll try to work in." Well, sure enough, showed up that day. Mr. Tony worked me in the contest and all. I judged the contest that day and all. Like I said, that was August 24th, 1996. I've been to every Cookeville cook-off since then. That was my judging, started my judging career. Like I said, I was in Madison, Indiana 2 weeks ago. It's about 325 of these contests I've been to. Probably judged 275 of them. Like I said, it all started right here in Cookeville, Tennessee. Compliments of Mr. Tony Stone. Said, affectionately known as the girls call him Papa Dean, or Papa Papa Tony and Mama Dean. Like I said, that was what this whole contest was all about. And it looked like the girls have stepped up to the plate. That'll make both of them real proud.
Okay. Several years ago, my name is Tana Shoup, PHB. I am a contest rep. I am a master judge. I have been an organizer in the past. And I've known Tony Stone for, I'd say, around 20 years. Several years ago, R.D. Davis, a.k.a. Remus Powers, PHB, called me with an idea about, let's just call it serendipity. We wanted a way for the teams toward the end of the season, and all barbecuers, to be able to smoke away, let's say, their bad scores, their unpleasant experiences, whether they be barbecue or personal or professional. So we came up with the idea to try to design something that we could do at the Jack Daniels World Barbecue Competition Invitational. And I contacted Tony Stone as a welder and a good friend and asked him to create and make a pig that we could, that would have like a little box in it that we could bring to the Jack and put on Friday night, put in the fireplace, and let everything go up in smoke, all of the bad scores, any bad feelings, any unhappiness, and be able to start the new barbecue year fresh. So I talked to Tony, and he said, oh yes, he could do that, he'd be happy to do that. And I told him, send me a bill, get her done. And I'm expecting a pig, maybe 2 feet long, maybe about 2 feet tall, with a little door that we can have everybody send in paper that has their little private thoughts on it, that would be confidential, and we would burn them at the Jack. Lo and behold, a couple of months later, this pig comes to us, and he's a good 4 feet long, and he's 3 feet tall, and we could have put a ream of paper in his little tummy to burn. In fact, he barely fit in the fireplace at the Jack. But he's absolutely, and it's a big fireplace. But he's absolutely gorgeous, and we wanted to come up with an appropriate name for him. So we thought, and of course we didn't want it to be Jack. But we did want something that was appropriate, since it was Jack Daniels. Well, Mr. Jack's name is Newton Jasper Daniel. So we decided to call our little pig, our big pig, Jasper. So now every year at the Jack, it takes about 2 people to carry in this pig laden with paper that has people's bad thoughts, bad scores, unhappy experiences. And the master distiller used to be Jimmy Bedford, who has now departed also. And we put a little Jack on all the paperwork and light a match and put him in the fireplace, and everything goes up in smoke, hopefully. All the bad scores, all the bad feelings, and all of the teams are able to start the new year just afresh with, I guess, hope in their heart to have a really good year the next year. I do have to share this part of this. At that very first burning of Jasper, we're on the hill, and our master distiller at the time, again, was Jimmy Bedford. Well, Jimmy stands up there, and he has this nice bottle of Jack, and he pours a little bit on, on Jasper, and then he takes that bottle and he goes glug, 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 and everybody's going, oh my word. And then he finished off the bottle, putting it on Jasper. And it's just a good story. It's a way to end the barbecue year. And I'm forever thankful to Tony for that. And I have to say, I'm sure nobody would be surprised that out of Tony's generous heart, he never sent us a bill and never allowed us to reimburse him for making Jasper. I think he was as proud of Jasper as we were. And that's... Okay. Here I am, Tana Shoup. I'm back again. PHB, that stands for Doctor of Barbecue Philosophy. That and $2 will buy me a Coke pretty much anywhere in the world. But this Tony story, let's see, is relevant to the year 2010. I wanted to rep with Tony. I haven't had an opportunity to do that very often. So I called Tony about a contest to be held in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in 2010 over Labor Day weekend. The weekend previous to that, I was repping a contest in New Holland, Pennsylvania. While I was out doing some shopping, I get a phone call, and it's Tony. So I said, "Hey, Tony, what's going on?" And he said, "Well, Tana, how are you doing?" And I said, "Well, where are you?" And he said, "I'm looking for a barbecue contest." And I thought that he had come all the way to New Holland, Pennsylvania, just to see that contest. And I thought, well, it's really neat. So I said, "Well, where are you?" Thinking I was going to give him directions. He said, "I'm in Myrtle Beach." I said, "Tony, that contest is next weekend." So he had gotten there a week early. I said, "Now what are you going to do?" And he said, "I guess I've got a room for 3 nights. I'm going to kick back and have a good time." So he relaxed in Myrtle Beach, and he did not come to the contest the next weekend. I had to have another rep because his contest in Cookeville was 2 weeks after that, so he didn't have the time to come back a second week in a row. But that's a fun Tony story.
Yeah, the trophy. Caution.
My name is Mark Maxwell. I work with the Cookeville Police Department and do a lot of special events. I'm here at the Cookeville Cook-Off, and I'm going to tell you a little story about my uncle who had recently passed away. His name's Tony Stone, and he was a very respected man in this town, and I respected him greatly. And I've been asked to tell a little story about him, and so I'm going to share one with you. I was sitting in my office one day, and I got a phone call from Uncle Tony, and he said, everybody affectionately calls Papa, and he said, "Maxwell," I always call me Maxwell. He said, "Maxwell, I need a favor." I said, "What do you need, Papa?" He said, I am in Greenville, Tennessee with my brother, and we're cooking for a group of people, and I've got another cookout this weekend, and I don't have time to make any barbecue sauce. I want you to make me some barbecue sauce." Which I did, quite frankly. I'd make him some barbecue sauce. And so I got out that Saturday and got all the stuff to make me some barbecue sauce. And he had developed a barbecue sauce we used over the years back when me and him catered. And it was I always called it Papa's original barbecue sauce. Well, he got to playing with it over the years, and we lost the original. But I kept the original recipe. So I took his old original recipe out, thought it would be funny, kind of fool him, since he hadn't had it in several years. And I took it and I changed it a little and spiced it up a little bit, put a few more ingredients in it. And Papa, he was the type of fellow that he'd never brag on his family. Never heard him brag on his family much. He would to other people, but he'd never brag. He'd never let you know how he felt about you. So I fixed this barbecue sauce, about a gallon of it, and I sent it over to his shop and gave it to his son-in-law and told him that there it is. And I forgot about it. Thought I'd wait to see if I heard anything. If you heard anything from him, you knew he liked it. If you didn't hear anything from him, it wasn't no good. That's just the way it was. So about Monday morning, I was sitting in the office, and Papa calls. Says, "Maxwell, what you got in this sauce?" I said, "Well, I've got several." He said, "Bring me the recipe." Well, I knew right then that it was all right. He approved, or he would never ask for the recipe. And I said, "What's the matter, Papa? Was the sauce any good?" He said, "Bring me the recipe." And that's all he'd ever say. So I went to the house and I got the recipe, because he's always taught us that whatever you put in it, write it down. And that's what I've done. So I had the recipe, all the new ingredients and everything I put in. And he used that sauce all the rest of his cookouts until he died. So he liked that sauce, and that's how I knew that he'd accepted the sauce and was liked it. Of course, he'd never say anything else. He'd never let me know. Never did tell me it was good. He liked it, nothing. But I knew he liked it, and I knew he approved of it, or he would never use it.
Hi, I'm Randy Travis Farms Cooking Team. We've been doing this several years, relatively new to Kansas City circuit. I didn't know Mr. Stone well, but I knew him. And the only story I can really tell you about him is we was a cook one time in Nashville. I pulled in there amongst all these $500,000 motor homes and these big fancy grills and all this stuff. And I was a little overwhelmed for just tell you the truth, I was a little overwhelmed. Old man come walking down through there and he introduced himself. He was Mr. Tony Stone. And I was standing there talking to him. He could tell I was just a little jittery and a little nervous. He said, "Son, let me tell you something." And he said, I'm never forgetting this since he told me. He said, "Boy, it don't matter if you got a 55-gallon drum or a $50,000 trailer." He said, "If you can't cook, you can't cook. Just do the best you can do." And that's pretty well the best story I got about Tony Stone. And I'll never forget it as long as I do this.
Howdy, I'm Sergeant Charlie Newman, retired, with Legacy Smokers. I've been cooking barbecue, me and my team, competitively for about 20 years now. One of the first people I met when we came onto the organized barbecue circuit was Tony Stone. Papa Tony at this event back 20 years ago. He was instrumental in mentoring us to help us learn the rules, a few of the tricks, and the regulations. But later on in life, we've cooked here ever since then. Tony was instrumental in helping myself, the Legacy team members, and Kathy Hollander with the Disability Resources Agency in Knoxville organize and run our first event in Knoxville. That was a total success, except for the rain got us. Tony was a KCBS. He helped form it, him and Carolyn Wells. He knew all about it. He was always helpful, always friendly, and always a gentleman. And we're going to miss him. Thank you.
Hi, this is Byron Chisholm. I'm a barbecue cooker, and I've known Tony Stone for about 14 years. We lost a great man. I just adore Tony. I've never heard a bad word said about him. Of course, we're at his event. He started the first KCBS cook-off east of the Mississippi, which is very significant considering it's the biggest barbecue organization in the world. Of course, Tony was a great cook and a really good judge. Everybody knows he was an organizer. He was a rep. And for a while, he was president of the KCBS. So we've been real blessed to have his passion for barbecue coincide with the rest of us, our passion for barbecue. He's made barbecue in a better, he's facilitated barbecue for all of us who love it so much. And we'll miss him. Tony, every time I come up with some crazy idea, I will contact him about building it for me. And I made several trips to Cookeville and have some stuff custom made. And if anybody could do it, their shop could. He was as good as a fabricator as he was anything. So anyway, the one story I do want to tell, and I just found out about this a couple of days ago. I had called and talked with Tony. I said, "Tony, I'd really like to come to the contest this year, but I didn't sign up for it. Do you have any spots left?" He said, "Well, big boy," he says, "I'd love to have you up here." He said, "Tell you what, technically I'm filled up, but I'm going to fit you in here." He goes, I can just make that happen. I can do that. And he says, "Let me see what I can do and I'll get back to you." Well, he didn't get back to me because the last thing he did was communicate with his girls, get by her to space. And that was the last thing he did. He died. He went off into remission and he never communicated anything else. That was the last thing he did was get me a space right here. So I miss you, buddy.
My name's Tim Owings. I'm cooking with Terry and Brenda Buchanan with High on the Hog out of Fayetteville, Tennessee. My favorite Tony Stone memory is the year we were doing a contest in Dixon, Tennessee, had to work with Tony a couple months before up in Clarksville, Tennessee, at a contest before we opened. Him and Ron Harwell were the reps. Went through, had a good heart-to-heart talk about not just setting up the contest, but what you need to do to take care of the teams, take care of the judges, get your community involved. Good overall experience. The man lived and loved barbecue passionately, and that carried through in everything he did when he was on the board as a rep, as a table captain, or as a CBJ instructor. We were lucky enough to have him as a great mentor for a lot of the teams and judges, and he's going to be really sorely missed here in the future. But he's got a great contest with a legacy with his daughters to carry on, and a lot of good memories for everybody involved in barbecue over the last 5-10 years or longer.
I've got a story about Mama Dean. I met her about 12 to 15 years ago, and we became best buddies on the barbecue circuit. And every time we went to a cook-off and Mama Dean and Tony were there, she would bring us a surprise. So I started bringing Mama Dean a surprise, and she would bring me a surprise. And it was always who could be the one on top, the one that gave the last gift. Well, we saw Mama Dean a couple of years ago, and we went to the house, and she had Tony go down to the basement, and she gave us tomato juice and home canned tomatoes and green beans and turnip greens. And I've just treasured that gift from her, and I love her to death. And Tony was the best. He always called me baby girl, and I will miss those words coming from him. Love y'all.
The first thing I'd like to say about Tony and Mama Dean is they were such an inspiration to me for the time that I knew them, as far as their love for their family, their friends, and even people they didn't know. You can see that in all the kids, the grandkids, and all the friends. And like a saying goes, once that little link in that chain has been broken, it will be connected back. So I just want the family to know that we love them very much. Tony. Tony was my mentor in making a special beverage. And when he taught me how to do this, I became probably pretty good at it, but I was not allowed to tell anyone where it came from or how to do it. Kind of like barbecue people. They don't give you all the ingredients. But during the special beverage contest last night, Tony's won and Moise came in second. So I had a real good teacher if I came in second. So that's my award for the weekend, whether we get anything else or not. Mama Dean has just been a sweetheart. She is in every room of my house. It was always, she would give us presents, and we would give her presents the next time we saw her, and it was a back and forth thing, and it got to be where she won at the end. She got to give the last present to us. Well, me and Marsha, really. I don't know who else. But always had some kind of little pig, and that's why my house is so full of Mama Dean memories. My memories, yes, of Tony will be up in my cabinet for many years to come. And we just love them all very much. We're going to miss them, but we know one day we're all going to be together again. And we love all the family very much. And we hope Cookville continues, because we will be here. So we love all of you, and y'all have a good and safe, happy year. Bye-bye.
Ready. Hi, I'm Randy Birch with Team Allegro, and I just wanted to let everybody know that one of my favorite Tony Stone stories is that we judged a couple of contests before we ever started cooking, and of course this was before you had to be, there was a certified table captain class, and so we're there, and Tony comes up to me and he goes, "Randy, you need to be a table captain today." And I said, "Well, Tony, there's only one problem with that. I've never done that before." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you know what? You're going to learn today. You're going to be a table captain." And I said, "Yes, sir, I sure will be." And I was a table captain. And so that's one of my favorite Tony Stone stories.
Hey, yep, I'm Milt Collins with the All Good Barbecue Pit Crew. here in Cookeville, our hometown. Got a quick story for you about Tony Stone, fine fella. About 10 years ago, I was interested in getting into competition barbecue, so I turned around and called him at his work. I said, Tony, you mind if I come by and talk to you? He said, no, come on by. So I went by, went up there to his office, sat down. We talked for a little while about different kinds of meats, and I told him how brisket scared me to death and stuff like that, just your typical rookie stuff. And later on in the conversation, he said, buddy, I'm gonna tell you 2 things. He said, first thing is, he said, you're gonna meet some of the absolute finest people you'll ever meet on this barbecue tour. He said, they'll do anything for you on Friday night. He said, but the second thing is, on Saturday, be ready, because they will beat your ass. He said, and he meant that. But I'm telling you the truth, that's one of the best sources of information I ever had. And the neat part is, after I picked his brain for a while, I realized he'd become a very, very close friend. So I personally am going to miss him severely, but everything he's ever taught me is right there in my mind, and I'll never forget it. I love the man.
Practicing for Mobile, anything but. We were playing what we were doing. And George owned the rest of the rib shack.
Entries will be read out.
Jay and I stayed at a different condo.
They will not be in numerical order.
And the guy who owned the condo called George, like on Tuesday after we left, and goes, George, somebody left her drugs here. My Lipitor and cholesterol. What name's on it? Andrew Gregg. And George goes, I don't know who this is. Don't have any idea.
9 is excellent, 8 very good, 7
and he ended up calling Tony, and he goes,
5 below average, 4,
we found some drugs there at the condo, cholesterol medicine stuff. Tony goes, what name's on it? Andrew Gregg. That's Blind Dog. And George went, I didn't know his name. He goes, okay, I'll call to see if he needs them or not. And I'd known George then probably 10 years.
And he didn't know your name?
Not a clue. No, absolutely not. And there's still people out here that don't know it. Uh-oh, here comes trouble from Kentucky.
Is this close enough?
That's good. You're hot.
We're John and Kathy Swift, Wild Bunch Butt Burner barbecue team from Atmore, Alabama. Our Tony Stone story goes back originating in Hammond at their contest, which is right on some mainline railroad, train about every 15 minutes. Tony always had a spot directly across from us. He and George cooked together. Sometimes Blind Dog came with them. George Sasser, that is, and Blind Dog. They always had their same spot, as did we. Well, we got to noticing they were kind of watching Kathy, going in and out of the motorhome and around and kind of chuckling and looking at one another. I said, this might be a good time to get rid of you. Let's see what they're up to. Turned out that they had a bet going on as to how many times she was going to change clothes during the day. And that got to be, for about 4 years, a running deal to keep up with Kathy and her clothes changing. That's our Tony Stone story, and we're sticking to it.
Hi, I'm Ricky Shelton, Cookeville Cook-Off. I've been involved for the past 18 years and got many fond memories of Tony. You know, he was the father of this event, started it here in Cookeville as a hamburger cook-off, and then as we grew, became the first event, KCBS event with all certified judges. So we're very proud of what Tony established here and look forward to many, many more years of this great event. And obviously tough this week because we did lose Tony only 5 days ago, but we're doing exactly what he would have wanted us to do, which is continue on with this event. And in his honor and in his remembrance, we will continue this and hopefully have many, many more years.
Okay. All right.
So I'm Rod Gray with Palate Envy, and I wanted to make a quick comment about Tony Stone, who passed recently, who will be greatly missed. Tony and I were friends, more professionally than socially. We interacted mostly on the Kansas City Barbecue Society Board of Directors. Tony served his maximum term he could serve there as the serving KCBS and doing so diligently and effectively. And what I remember most about Tony Stone is he was a true Southern gentleman. I don't care the situation in the boardroom. I don't care how heated it got. I don't care how much friction there was between members of the board. Tony handled it in the most professional way possible. Tony never raised his voice. Tony never said a harsh word. He was just absolutely the epitome of a true Southern gentleman. That's what I'll remember about Tony Stone.
Introduce yourself first.
All right. My name is Stick, Mike Herring, and Fayetteville, Tennessee, General Pork Petitioners competition team. And we also do vending, which my son has taken over now. And I'm very proud of him. He's starting his own business in Georgia, and it's going to be called RIBS, RIBS, which stands for Ridiculously Incredible Barbecue Sauce. And he's my best friend in the world and just a great guy. I guess my best Tony story would have to be one Saturday morning after we had a smash competition. And people familiar with Mark might know what smash competitions are, but anyway, we had one of those here at Cookeville, and I was a little groggy, I guess, the best way to put it. And I was outside, and Tony comes trotting across the parking lot, and he hollers over there, "How you doing, Stick?" I said, "George, I'm doing fine. I'm doing great." And he looked at me kind of funny, and he walked on off, and I said, "Wait a minute, his name's not George. What the hell is his name?" Needless to say, smash can cause you to do some funny things. And I didn't, after he got gone, I finally thought, Tony, why'd I call him George? Know his name as good as mine. And about 2 hours later, Tony came over and just started hanging around. Something he's never done before. And he hangs around out here and talking to me a little bit. And finally I said, Tony, what's going on? And he says, well, I just wanted to make sure he was okay. And I said, did I do something wrong? He says, well, you called me George. And he said, I was worried there might be something wrong with you. And I assured him what the problem was, and he says, I totally understand. He said, I'll see you later, Stick, and off he was gone. So, wonderful story and a great man,